Welcome again, everyone, as we celebrate the third Sunday in Ordinary Time. As I was preparing for this homily, the very first reading is about Jonah. And I happened to get this from my cousin in California. A little girl was talking to her teacher about whales. And the teacher said it was physically impossible for a whale to swallow a human because even though it was a very large animal, its throat was very small. And the little girl stated that Jonah was swallowed by a whale. Irritated, the teacher reiterated that a whale could not swallow a human. It was physically impossible. And the little girl said, "When I get to heaven, I'll ask Jonah." And the teacher asked, "What if Jonah went to hell?" And the little girl replied, "Then you ask him." I've mentioned before that you can't read these stories from the scripture literally. You've got to look at the message that is behind the story. This is a spiritual volume. And there is a gentleman by the name of George Lamsa who lived at the beginning of the 20th century. And he was born and raised in the Tigris-Euphrates area, which is now Syria. And so his very first language was Aramaic, which is the language that Jesus spoke. And he was a brilliant person, but he was an ordinary shepherd living in a very primitive society that was virtually separated from the outside world. Well, eventually he moved from that confined environment and became a scripture scholar. And because he knew Aramaic and was familiar with the Semitic languages, from which the Greek was translated, he had intimate insight into the language. And one of the things that he was famous for was pulling out of the scriptures the idioms that are common to the Semitic languages. Well, he put together a small volume with over 1,000 idioms that are in the Semitic language that have been translated directly into the Greek. And they're translated literally. Well, if you know anything about idioms, if you know the English language and you tell somebody, "I'm in a pickle," nobody is going to think you're inside of a pickle. And in the Semitic language, they have a similar idiom that says, "I'm in a fish." And that's where the story of Jonah comes from. Now, Lamsa completed his studies here in the United States and spent his entire life translating from the early Semitic languages directly into English. That was the first time that was ever done. And if you look at the idiom of Jonah, what is the application? Well, the scriptures are saying, look, God calls you to do things that sometimes are very challenging. And sometimes we try to avoid getting involved in those things. But when you finally make a decision to work through that difficulty in your life, when you come out at the other end, you're always a bigger and a better person with more understanding about the way life goes. And you make life better for the people who are around you. Now, you know, I was blessed to study with Rocco Errico, with whom George Lamsa worked for 10 years before he died. And Rocco Errico now is carrying on the work of Lamsa. Now, Lamsa spent his entire life translating the Bible from the original Semitic languages into English. And it's in this single volume called the Lamsa Bible, so that all of the idioms that he has exposed to the world are contained in this Bible. Now, you know, I think it's really important that you pay attention to this lesson. That right now, I am sure every one of you has something on your plate that may be difficult to deal with, but you know you have to deal with it. And what you've got to do, according to the scriptures, is pick up the responsibility of going ahead and get involved in that particular aspect of your life so that you can make your life better and the lives of the people around you better. That's the application. So I am suggesting that as you go into this coming week, look at some aspect of your life that you need to deal with, but that you may be avoiding, and see if you can follow Jonah's example. Work through it, and then pay attention to how much more meaningful your life is and how good it is for the people who are around you. And remember this, no matter what the difficulty may be, you are an expression of divine, cosmic, unconditional love energy. There is no limit to what you can do. So see what you can do about looking into your life, making it a little bit better by working through this challenge. And remember, you can do anything. Have a wonderful week. Ciao, bambini.
Ciao bambini.